Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to please welcome my guest. He was the star of the 1993 cult classic film Blood In, Blood Out, alongside my first guest on the show. He starred alongside my first guest, the incredibly talented and wise Enrique Castillo, also starring Vin Rames, Danny Trejo, so many amazing actors with incredible success before and after the film's completion, Blood In, Blood Out, directed by Taylor Hackford. Now, my guest today also played the role of Italian mobster Carmine alongside Chris Tucker and Charlie Sheen in the 1997 New Line hit Money Talks. And as a fan, ladies and gentlemen, of the Street Fighter video game series, how awesome is this? He played the role of Ken Masters in the live-action film 1994's Street Fighter, starring alongside the late and great Raul Julia, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please welcome my guest, writer, actor, director, Damian Chapa, to the broadcast. Hello, Damian. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, how are you? Hey, my cousin Teresa, she's out there in Maryland. She would be so proud of the way you said my name, because you said it right.
Well,
Damian Chapa.
Damian Chapa.
She would say it just like that. Thank you for saying it right for her.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Chapa, yesterday, let's jump right into the show here. Yesterday was Gun Appreciation Day, a day to celebrate the Second Amendment. Now, with so many attacks on our civil liberties today leading up to our interview, I can't help but quote Chris Tucker in Money Talks when he said, "Guns don't kill people. Stupid mother expletives with guns kill people." Now, the founding fathers stated that the right to bear arms shall never be infringed. And I also wanted to state that the statistics show that neighborhoods where the law-abiding citizenry is armed, they have the lowest crime rates. Now, what are your views on this endlessly controversial topic of gun control?
You know, I think it's obviously a very big topic. It's a big social situation. I mean, we all have our different thoughts on the Second Amendment, and especially with guns and how many guns we should have and why we should have them. But it's obvious that it was incorporated in the Constitution for our safety and for ourselves to protect against a tyrannical government. However, there are people that just don't have the wisdom to use guns. So, I mean, it's a very difficult thing to discuss. But my personal views, I believe that any man or woman that is capable of not carrying, but owning a weapon should have the freedom to do so. It's part of the United States. It's part of our foundation. It's part of our freedom. It's part of the freedom that most countries don't have. And I've traveled so many countries, and they look at Americans, they look at it so strange. It's like, oh, those Americans, you hear them all the time, especially in Europe, talking about how the Americans, they all have guns and they're all cowboys. But they don't realize, how, I don't think they realize as much as they should, how our country was started and how even though we had so many difficult times, whether it would be the assassination of certain presidents or senators or civil rights leaders, they're also that's such a minute group of people that were affected versus the millions and millions and millions of people who are protected with these guns. So, it's obvious I'm not the kind of person that thinks, I'm not obsessed with guns. I just think it's a right that we deserve to have, and it should never be taken away from us. You have I think it's close to 300 million people in America, and if one or two or 10 idiots do something stupid, doesn't mean everybody else's rights should be taken away. That's just the way I see it. I mean, not to mention, if we're going to take away guns, we're going to have to take away scalpels too. Doctor
Exactly.
Scalpels, because that's what kills babies, doesn't it?
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right.
Not to be controversial.
No, absolutely. This show doesn't shy away from controversy, Mr. Chapa.
Nah, neither have I.
Exactly. Now, moving forward, Mr. Chapa, tell our listening audience about your days in theater. You starred in Under Siege. I believe that was around 1992, leading up to your epic role in the 1993 classic Blood In, Blood Out. And also the fact that it was filmed from within San Quentin, where the set literally consisted of real inmates serving time during the film. Your thoughts?
Well, Under Siege was a great experience. Seagal, and back in that day, he was a really big star, and really, I always thought he was a great guy to work with. And it was a very big film. I started in theater in New York. For me, I jumped from doing 80-seat theater at the 18th Street Playhouse, where I spent a great deal of my life in New York. I was born in Ohio, but I moved to New York as a kid and kind of, grew up there in my teens and 20s. And I had a lot of experience in theater, but my first films were Under Siege, and then I went on to do Blood In, Blood Out. Actually, Blood In, Blood Out was the first one I filmed. Under Siege came out first. But Blood In, Blood Out was a whole different experience. Under Siege was a big studio film. It was more commercial. It was a classically commercial film, and big money, big stars, and it was really fun. And you couldn't be more excited being a young actor coming from theater doing such a massive film. But Blood In, Blood Out was a whole different thing. Blood In, Blood Out and I've done 50 movies since, but Blood In, Blood Out was an experience. I think I remember Jimi Hendrix saying the Jimi Hendrix experience.
Yeah.
Well, Blood In, Blood Out was an experience. It was a life-changing thing for me, being that I was bicultural. My mother is of German and Scottish descent, along with American Indian. And my father is Mexican and Italian descent, also has some American Indian. But, we were multicultural. But my dad was brought up in the Chicano community. So for me, I had tidbits of this growing up, and certain words in Spanish that were spoken. My grandmother only spoke Spanish. She didn't speak hardly any English. So for me, it was part of my culture growing up, but it wasn't instilled in me. I didn't really understand who I was or what I was because I was multicultural. But once I started to get involved in the movie Blood In, Blood Out, I started to discover myself and my culture through it, along with the music, the cultura. I spoke a little Spanish before, but I really started speaking much more afterwards and during the film. And I started to understand what the Chicano culture was. And it was something that really brought me close to it, to my father's roots and to my own roots, going back to Mexico, of course. I was very proud of doing the film, and I was also it was really a beautiful experience that to this day has never left me. There's not a day that goes by that I don't remember Blood In, Blood Out as a great experience in my life, not only as an actor but as somebody that is of Mexican American descent.
Absolutely. Now in Blood In, Blood Out, your character Miklo Belka and Magic, played by Victor Rivers. Now, they basically pulled a Brutus and Cassius, and they were involved in a plot to kill their leader, Montana, played by Enrique Castillo. Now, I had Enrique on the show, and he stated that Miklo ruled from a position of fear. Can you tell our listening audience about how your character, Miklo Belka's rise from obscurity, his struggles with his family, in particular his cousin Paco, played by Benjamin Bratt in Taylor Hackford's film?
Well, Benjamin Bratt and Jesse Borrego and I, we spent many months, not weeks or days, but months, getting prepared. Taylor Hackford's a methodical director, and he is used to working with methodical actors. I'm not a method actor. I'm actually somebody who just becomes it, and then when I'm done, I walk away from it. But a lot of the actors I was working with, including Ben and a lot of others, are method actors, but we all enjoyed living together. Taylor put us in East LA, in City Terrace area, and it was very, very emotional. The first few days we saw some kid get killed over there. It was really, really emotional for us. We started to really experience the East LA, some of the darker points of it, and some of the most beautiful things about it, including the culture, the food, the dance, everything that's beautiful about our culture. But we also, like I said, we experienced some of the bad things like the drive-bys and stuff like that firsthand. And we were living with some people that were very involved and had been to prison and so on and so forth. And we all learned really what it was like to grow up there. We lived it, we felt it, we breathed it, we danced it, we did it all. And Jesse is such a genius artist. He was always constantly, if anybody was more perfect for the role, it was Jesse Borrego playing Cruz. I mean, Jesse really brought Ben and I together into this kind of spiritual and, social Chicano experience. So Jesse was the one who, bonded us together, because there was a lot of intensity between Ben and I and everybody, it was like, who was really going to rule? Because, you're not only actors, you're like fighting for position as young men to, it's that whole machismo spirit that kind of took over. And we would fight sometimes. We would argue about certain issues, social issues, and sometimes even political issues. But at the end of the day, it was Jesse who brought us together in an artistic experience. He was always creating, Jesse. He would be painting. If he wasn't painting, he was dancing. If he wasn't dancing, he was singing. And I just, as a brother, I just began to love him so much, because he really taught me about where we came from, what we were about, and where we were going, not only in the movie as actors, but the Chicano experience, And I was so happy to live with those guys. But what happened was, when we started doing the movie, certain things would happen, like, like you say, Kiki said, I came from a point of fear. But see, he when he's talking about that as a character, he's talking about what his thoughts as his character would think of Miklo being learning, I should say, leaning towards the position of fear to rule.
Correct.
But me, as myself, Damian Chapa, and as the character Miklo, I would have to completely disagree with that.
Of
because
course.
I think that Miklo did not rule from the position of fear. I think he did it with complete intelligence, and I'll tell you why. Because when Miklo decided to kill Montana, it wasn't really fear. It was based upon survival. See, because if he didn't kill Montana, then there would be all this political correct peace movement, and then Ondo would have died.
Exactly.
And this is the whole thing, it's the same thing with this guns rights issue in America. Sometimes people die when you're fighting something evil, whether it's a war, a social war, a civil rights movement, whatever it may be. Certain people, sometimes there are certain sacrifices. I hate to say it. Yeah. It's really dark, and it's depressing when you say these things, but sometimes, and I know we're talking about a movie here.
Yeah.
But Blood and Blood Out is more than a movie. It was a way of life for people.
Exactly. Just touching back up on your thoughts on Jesse Borrego. I mean, it seems like he really did bring out the carnalismo between you actors, right?
Well, Jesse. I mean, I tell you, I've met and worked with just about every actor there is in Hollywood, and to this day, he was one of my greatest experiences as a comrade, because he was very fair, because there would be certain fights between me and other actors, and certain political points and thoughts, and whatever they were. I mean, we're all living together, and we didn't know each other, and we found ourselves living together, and some of us thought it was too much. Why do we have to? Not me. I kind of loved it. I thought it was great to get the experience. But some of the actors didn't like the fact that we had to live and breathe this real experience. And especially after the first few days when we saw somebody get killed. It was just a crazy experience. But Jesse would bring this whole, how can I say it other than Jesse would make things colorful even when they were depressing. Even when the work was too hard and we were doing 18-hour days and, Disney was pushing us a little too hard, especially my character, because my character was overworked so much, and they would come in and try to do what they usually do, which is get you to work for free. I have no problem saying that. And Jesse would just make it a colorful experience. You would have a dark, depressing day, and then you would have wonderful days where the acting experience was great. But even when it was down, Jesse would start singing or dancing or doing some poetic thing that just would make you smile through it all,
Speaking about poetic, how influential was it to have such a great poet like Jimmy Santiago Baca write the screenplay for Blood In, Blood Out?
Well, I'll never forget when Taylor Hackford and Jesse, I should say Jimmy Baca, they met me for dinner at some place in Hollywood. I can't remember the name of the place, but I remember the experience. And they took me in and they were kind of grilling me because, they had all these actors up for the role. Chris Penn was up for the role. All these named actors at the time. I was, a very unknown actor and not very experienced, not experienced at all in film. And they were grilling me constantly for a few hours, what I thought of Miklo and, what I thought of the character and what I thought of where I was going to take him, and all these questions, one after the other. And I just, Taylor especially was grilling me with that because, like I said, he's very methodical. And Jimmy would every now and then just look at me and say, this guy is Miklo, man. You are Miklo. And, he was so supportive and poetic and. Anybody who knows Jimmy for 5 minutes knows he's a poetic genius, I mean, he can speak in ways that people sing. It's just so beautiful to hear him with his poetry and just speak in real life. You talk about a gift to gab, and he's just genius, man. And anybody would know that by watching Blood In, Blood Out, because he is the heart of Blood In, Blood Out, as far as I'm concerned regarding the writing. Jimmy wrote most of it. I mean, we had a chance to add a few things or take away or, kind of make them our own and stuff, but most of it was Jimmy's experience in life, experience in the prison system, experience in, with the Chicanismo. He understood it, like Jesse also did. I mean, Jesse was the thespian part of it, but if anybody was the one who gave life and breathed life into the roles as far as writing, it was Jimmy. Jimmy gave us such a beautiful script, It was, I mean, people remember this, and it's a 20-year-old film. I mean, I have people coming up to me in Europe. I mean, I'll get off a train somewhere, and I mean, in the middle of nowhere in Bulgaria, of all places, and somebody will start ranting off these one-liners from Big Al. And that came from Jimmy. Jimmy's a genius.
Yeah, absolutely. Great poet. So many great actors were casted in the film and have had many prominent roles to this day in TV and film. I mean, Enrique Castillo in Weeds and Deja Vu, great performances. I love the woman who played your mom in Blood In, Blood Out, Jenny Gago, her performance in TNT's Southland as of late. Of course, Danny Trejo and Machete and Desperado. I was traumatized when I saw Pulp Fiction as a youth. The scene with Vin Rames and Bruce Willis. I mean, wow! But it was still great epic movie.
That's funny you say that because I was offered the role of one of those in Pulp Fiction of one of the kids and that gets shot by, I think who was it? It was.
Samuel L. Was it Samuel L?
Yeah. What's his name again?
Samuel L. Jackson and
Yeah,
And,
Jackson, Mr. Jackson, a great actor. He shoots the kids, the two of the kind of yuppie kids, and they offered me one of those roles back then. I'll never forget it. And I remember reading it and saying, "You got to be kidding me! If I do this role, I'll never be able to go around like people again." You know?
Exactly.
And I remember my brother saying, "You got to do it! You got to do it! You know, you got to do this! You know, this guy's a great director." Blah blah blah. You know, he did Reservoir Dogs, and I said, "No, I'm not going to do this." And it was the best decision I ever made in my life, because you know, I would have been one of those yuppie kids that got blasted by Samuel Jackson.
And boy,
it wouldn't have been good for me, you know.
Also, Raymond Cruz played Chewie. Loved his performance in Training Day. Of course, Benjamin Bratt in Demolition Man. So many other films. The list literally goes on and on, right? I mean, Carlos Carrasco in Speed. So many great actors have gone on to prominent roles from Blood In, Blood Out.
Well, Jenny Gago is she's such a beautiful woman. Like, I'll never forget seeing her for the first time on set and thinking to myself, now this is going to be a great acting job. I'm going to have to act like she's my mother. Because, I mean, she's just such a sexy, beautiful woman. I mean, she's the epitome of a sensual creature. So for me, that was a bit difficult. But, you know, I had pulled it off and played young and acted like she was my mother for a little while. But once the role was done, I was like, oh, my gosh, mamma mia, how beautiful. Beautiful woman.
Absolutely, very talented as well. Now, tell us about your role in Money Talks and the cast where you play Carmine. I mean, absolutely one of my favorite movies to this day. I just watched it yesterday with my kids.
Oh, now that was an experience. I mean, we had Charlie in the big, I'll never forget, every time we were shooting, Charlie was in his big bus. You know, he had this big giant bus, and he would hardly ever come out of it unless we worked. And then me and Chris would hang out, and Chris, back then my father was alive, and he would come on the set, and he just loved Chris, and Chris treated him so well. I'll never forget how humble he was as a human being. Chris is a great guy. He's just like he is in the movies. I mean, he's always making you laugh, and he's so funny. And it was a great experience working with him. I tell you, he's a very talented man. He really is. I hope the best for that guy. He treated me like he treated me like one of his own family and my dad. So I can't say anything good about Chris. I mean, I can't say anything bad about him. He's just a great guy, man.
Yeah.
And a really brilliant comedian. You know, the timing he has he's probably one of the best of our time, I would say.
Hilarious.
I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
Not at all. Loved him in Rush Hour, of course. Now, you played the role of Ken Masters, and to this day, you know, you could ask my kid, I still play the old Street Fighter games, and I've always picked two fighters, Ryu and Ken. And I've been playing the video game series for decades. Now, how cool was it to star alongside Jean-Claude Van Damme and the late Raul Julia, who I thought was a great villain in Clint Eastwood's The Rookie, and he was Gomez also in The Addams Family. Of course, he plays M. Bison in the film. Can you tell our listening audience about your role in the live-action 1994 Street Fighter film?
Well, it's interesting because I just got done playing Raul Menendez in a miniseries, and you know, of course, I've done Blood and Blood Out and all these pretty serious films. And I remember one of the agents at ICM kept calling me up and saying, "Hey, we have this role for you in Street Fighter." And funny enough, I was a bit of a recluse and still am, and I hadn't heard of it. You know, the game. Not that I should. You know, I mean, I should have heard of it at the time, but I didn't. I wasn't very much in the games and all that. But my agent called me up and said, you know, we have this role, Ken in Street Fighter. It's great. It's a big Universal film. And, you know, of course I was attracted to the studio aspect of it. It's a big Universal film. But then I heard Jean-Claude Van Damme was going to be in it. And I wasn't really, you know, that motivated as a serious actor to work alongside him. Nothing personal. I just didn't, you know, find him to be, you know, a genius talent or anything. Mm-hmm. But then my agent, after the third time I turned it down, he called me up and said, "Hey, Raul Julia is going to be in it. And the moment he said Raul Julia, I said, are you kidding? Raul Julia is going to do this movie? This is a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah.
So I went all the way out to Thailand just so I could work with Raul Julia. I was so happy that he was in the film. And I got out there, and, you know, it was a very interesting experience because none of us that were traveling knew, but at the time Raul was very sick. And, you know, he wasn't doing very well physically, but I tell you what, such a genius actor and hard worker he was. He knew he was sick. He knew he was dying. This was his last film. And they would make him this, you know, grandiose costume with this big red leather supportive chest pieces to make him look bigger, because at the time he was, you know, he lost a lot of weight because he was pretty sick. And, you know, it was very difficult. Him and I spoke many times in the 70s. It was so difficult for him to give that performance that he's used to giving, that, you know, that Raul Julia intensity. But what happened was we'd be there for hours rehearsing, and he'd be sitting and, you know, trying to conjure his health together. And then once the director said action, he would come into this grandiose bison, you know, expression, and it's just amazing, the energy it took from a very sick man at the time. And he pulled it off, and he passed away just shortly after the film. But it was such an honor to work with such a genius, brilliant man who was also a very kind and loving father. And it was a great experience working with him.
Absolutely, great actor, great film. I still watch it to this day. Love it.
But you know, playing Ken was, you know, I mean, to this day, you know, people come up to me, especially young kids, hey, you played Ken. I was like, yeah, that's me. And they asked me, what was it like playing Ken? What was it like being in Street Fighter?
Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, you know, people want to know about the actors, but one of the greatest experiences on that film was working with Kylie Minogue, because she was such, you know,
that's right,
a beautiful little creature.
Absolutely.
Kylie was great.
Now, Damian, you have directed so many successful independent films. I wanted to cover some of your latest work titled Dominique Strauss-Kahn Unauthorized. Now, this is a film about the sex scandal revolving the former managing director over at the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And at one point, you know, the people are so brainwashed. 60% of France believe that Strauss-Kahn was a victim of some plot. Now, Dominique Strauss-Kahn is said to have lived a decadent lifestyle straight out of a Stanley Kubrick film. Now, Damian, can you tell us about your film and this infamous socialist with presidential aspirations, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, your film, Dominique Strauss-Kahn Unauthorized?
Well, you know, DSK, my film, it is about the scandal that happened to him in New York with the lady at the hotel. It does weave in and out of that story, but a lot of the story has to do with how the IMF and how Dominique Strauss-Kahn, in my opinion, were almost, if I could say the term, financial terrorists, in so many words, when it came to how they took over certain financial aspects of countries such as Ireland, Greece, and so on. I mean, what they do is the IMF and Dominique Strauss-Kahn had gone into these different countries, and they take the real wealth and then they lend back credits, you know, and then people don't realize this.
Exactly.
This is financial terrorism, and this is what the problem is. And, you know, of course, the film delves into the controversy with the so-called controversy and the allegations at the time of attempted rape and so on and so forth, which he was freed on. But most of it discusses and follows the expression of a certain character who's trying to find the truth of what the IMF was about, what Dominique Strauss-Kahn's role was, this plot to take away the financial freedom of certain countries. And this is what I try to express in the movie, and it's very controversial, and I didn't pull any punches, and it's probably got me a little bit of trouble about a year ago. Sometime we can discuss that, but
I can imagine.
You're talking about a very powerful organization. The IMF is, and not to mention Germany. Germany is very well attached to this whole process. I mean, Germany is a very powerful nation now. People don't realize this, or maybe they do, but I don't think they realize the extent of how the kind of armed IMF is derived through Germany, and not just Dominic Strauss-Kahn, but this group of people that have this, billions and billions of dollars invested in this, what I think is financial terrorism.
Absolutely.
And so we delve in the movie with that aspect, the whole situation with, I delve into the whole Illuminati aspect of it. A lot of people are afraid to do that. Or, you see all these people and these rappers talking about the Illuminati in their videos and so on. I was talking about the Illuminati in the early 90s on the sets of Under Siege and Street Fighter and Money Talks. I was talking about, the back of the dollar bill with the pyramid back then, way before any of these guys were talking about it, way before any of these shows were coming out. I was discussing all of this with the pioneers of this expression, Anthony Hilder.
Exactly.
And a group of other people. We were talking about this in the early 90s. And everybody thought we were crazy, and they would say things like, I'll never forget, I was on the set of, I think it was Money Talks, and there was about 40 or 50 people that gathered around to hear my thoughts on the Illuminati and what I felt, I was discussing certain symbols that I found provocative, and not only on the dollar bill, but all over the United States government buildings and so on.
Exactly.
And, back then they were saying, hey, look, Damian, you can't talk about this. And I thought to myself, well, are they afraid that I'm going to say something that's true? And back then I think it was they really thought that I was a bit paranoid. But now it's like this whole fashion thing. It's almost a fashion statement to discuss or wear either anti-Illuminati regalia or pro-Illuminati. I mean, you have this imbecile Jay-Z,
yes,
who sold his soul and his whole, and if he wants to challenge me on that, I'd be willing to debate him any time. But you sell your soul to this whole system. You provocate all these symbols that we know nowadays, all of us do, are not only occult, but they represent a group that, it's very simply put, they want to destroy our freedom. And so why would somebody like him or Lady Gaga or these other people who are supposed to be artists use these expressions and these symbols that we know to be negative and we know to be against things that we have constantly thought of as good? Who knows why they do it, other than the fact that they just simply have sold themselves out. It's okay to be an artist. It's okay to do anything you want to express yourself and so on and so forth. But it seems to be a trend of anti-freedom going on, specifically with this whole Illuminati regalia.
Yes. Now, Damian, I'm no stranger to covering the occult, in particular the ceremonies, the fraternizing of the elite that have gone on for decades here in Northern California, in Monterey, California. Now, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, almost every president has been in attendance at that ceremony. Fortune 500 companies, officials of the military-industrial complex, the media, the banksters, basically the 1%. They all attend. They congregate there for years. Now, aside from dictating American foreign policy without congressional authority, violating the Logan Act, various breaches of the Constitution, it's said that they engage in pagan and Luciferic ceremonies. Now, I'm sharing this with you because, in a way, it leads me to your film, Death of Evil, which really it reminded me of Rosemary's Baby, a screenplay by Roman Polanski. It really did. Now, your film deals with the occult, and it's a real thriller indeed. I mean, your character, David Thunder, who, as a child, his Native American grandmother assured him, hey, those serpents you see in your dreams, they could be casted out by a great spirit. And then, he falls in love with an aristocrat, Julia Asher, played by the Russian actress Natasha, and I hope I say this wrong, Blasik. David, in a way, he's oblivious that his love, Julieta, belongs to a satanic family. Now, Damian, can you tell our listening audience about your film, Death of Evil?
Well, Death of Evil, I've done all these studio films and all this as we discussed, but Death of Evil is a very important film for me. It's a very, very, very small budget. But for me, it was something I'm very proud of doing because not only an expression as an artist for me, it was also an expression as a man of what I've gone through a certain, I can't talk too much about it now because there's a certain case going on with this, but because I've sued somebody, but I did get involved with somebody that has involvement in this type of family, and it was hidden. It was as what the occult is. It's hidden. Esoteric, exoteric situations with these types of ceremonies and stuff, and I had firsthand experience with these types of people, and I know it to be true. And let me tell you, it's very prevalent in Europe. It's very prevalent in the United States, and things like the Bohemian Grove. I mean, I was talking about Bohemian Grove in the early 90s, like I said, and people thought we were crazy. People like Anthony Hilder and I, we would discuss things to big stars like this and say, hey, look, what's going on? And, then you have the whole aspect of Christianity versus paganism. Let's just say, for example, if we're not talking as a Christian, which I am, but let's say you were just talking as an intellectual and saying, hey, look, or somebody that just was curious about it. Hey, whether you're Christian or not, you've got a group of very powerful people that are dressing up in robes, dark robes, having fake effigies or fake sacrifices, so-called false sacrifices of children, and that's what they do every year in a druidic fashion up in Bohemian Grove. Now I know this is now getting out there, but see what's going on is these things are being it's kind of like the revelation of the method. Back in the old days, none of this was given to the public, or the profane, as they call us. It was very well kept secret. It was hidden. It was occult. Nobody knew about these things except the people that were involved, and some people maybe have stumbled on it. What has happened is they have said, hey, let's actually show them what we're doing. Let's tell them that we're having these sacrifices. Let's show them the images, the robes, the Nile River with all the high Masonic, high satanic, high occult, druidic, sacrificial situations, and they're showing them to people, not just in the Bohemian Grove, but throughout many studio movies, many TV shows, many advertising. And you know what? Nobody's doing anything about it. And that's what I would call mind control. Because if you have all these, and I try to express it in my movies, for years I've tried to show, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is some of the types of people that are involved. But you know what? The interesting thing about it is, when I put these things out of my films, nobody seems to change. Nobody seems to care. I mean, they shot John Kennedy at high noon on the 33rd degree parallel of the world. They shot him in Dealey Plaza. George Dealey was a 33rd degree Freemason. Wow. Gerald Ford was hired to write the Warren Commission, or I should say, or Warren was, and they hired Gerald Ford along with Damian Chapa, Bruce Montalvo Show, and Bruce Montalvo Show, and Damian Chapa, 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 and Damian Chapa LBJ, I should say J. Edgar Hoover, to help arrange this so-called commission, and they're all 33rd degree Freemasons.
Alan Dulles, CIA, Kennedy fired him, and now he's investigating the shoddy investigation. I mean, it's laughable.
And Bush, too. Bush was involved, too.
Yes.
I mean, he's a 33rd degree Freemason. So, look, I don't want to say that all Freemasons are bad, because they're not. I mean, I know some Freemasons that are very good people. But trust me, at a certain, it's used as a way for the occult and specific mafias, and it's not the Italian mafia, it's the occult mafia is what it is. And, these people are very, very ritualistic. And they'll do things like put people that are uncovering them in jail for things they didn't do. And trust me, I know what it's like, because I've been there. And they've done it from day one. They'll either destroy you, they'll either kill you, they'll kill your career, or they'll do what they did to our wonderful real president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. They'll just blow your head off right in daylight, right in front of... See, what happened there was they committed not only a criminal offense, but it was an occult ritual, in my belief. Some people won't understand this, and they may not even care, but what I think it was an occult experience for all of us. We saw this wonderful president in his, prime, somebody who was actually leading us somewhere the economy was good. He was printing silver certificates, backed by silver. He was trying to get his last executive order was 11110, which was to get rid of the Federal Reserve notes. He wanted to get rid of the CIA, which obviously is anti-American or anti-anything freedom, because everything they do is based on manipulative secrecy, and our own people are afraid of the CIA. People in the United States are afraid of the CIA. They're afraid of the FBI and every other alphabet soup, and that shouldn't be the way it is. We shouldn't be afraid of the people who service us, and that's what's happened, and that's where the tyranny exists, whether it's just mental or a stronghold using the military. And the fact is, this is where the whole Second Amendment comes in. This is where the whole thing with being able to bear arms to protect ourselves from people that are manipulative. I mean, look, if they shot our president right in front of us, and they shot him at high noon on the 33rd degree parallel of the world, right in front of us on TV, right in front of us, I mean, what else can they do? I mean, they shoot a president. Well, I mean, we're nothing compared to a president, are we?
Nothing.
We're just, so if they can do that to John Kennedy, what else can they do to us? And the thing is, they still haven't figured that one out yet. So, and the same people are in charge that were back then. The Bush, I mean, look at Bush. George Bush, and then his son, George Bush on 1991, September 11th, looked at the American people and the world and said, it's a big idea. It's not just a group of small nations. It's a big idea, the New World Order. And he said, we will prevail. He literally said, with complete confidence and arrogance, the New World Order will be in place. 10 years later, September 11th, look what happened. His son's in office, reading an upside-down funny enough, a book with an upside-down goat. Look it up yourself. The book is turned upside down, so the goat is upside down in a classroom full of kids, and the 9/11 happened. So, I mean, it's obvious. It's not only it's a conspiracy, but it's an occult conspiracy. And anybody who doesn't realize it at this point, really, I would suggest go back to sleep.
Exactly. Now, Damian, can you tell us about another controversial character? You played the character of Roman Polanski in the film your film Polanski Unauthorized, where you play the controversial Polish French film director.
Well, that was when it all started for me. I'd done films many years as an actor. I was part of the whole Hollywood system, so to speak. I'd been there. I'd been to the parties, the places, the people. And the moment that I announced to the world that I was going to do a movie on Roman Polanski, I knew that I was crossing the line then. I knew that there was no turning back. You know, that I was going to be doing a film about one of their own. And what I mean by that is anybody who doesn't realize that Polanski is one of their own, like I said, should go back to sleep again, because here's a man who literally raped a child, sodomized the child, gave the child drugs and alcohol. Now, if anybody doesn't think a 13-year-old's a child, I mean, I guess maybe they, you know, being liberal is one thing, but, you know, that's a 13-year-old is a kid, you know. I mean, they're just not able to conceive yet. And especially if, you know, in this case, now, at the time, people were projecting me, saying, oh, she was 17, 16, 17, whatever, 18. I was like, hey, look, if it was some 18-year-old girl, they were in love, it's a whole different story. But the thing is, you know, it was a 13-year-old kid. And what I couldn't understand is here's a guy who rapes a kid, gets convicted of it, not falsely accused, but convicted of it. DNA and all the, I should say, you know, all the tests that they did for that back then, and what happens? He gets an Academy Award after this. Now, I understand that artists can still be great artists if they're in prison or if they're criminals or whatever. You can still create great art. But look at that whole situation with Mel Gibson, where Mel Gibson made a brilliant film, what I think is a masterpiece, Passion of the Christ. And, you know, then he gets drunk and does some stupid, outlandish, I mean, you know, he became drunk and did some, expressed himself in a really kind of a nutty way, but it wasn't anything that really can compare to raping a kid. But look at what happened to him. They completely destroyed him. Maybe it was because he was doing a pro-faith film, a pro-Christ film, whatever the case may be. But if you see the hypocrisy in that, and that's what I saw, and that's one of the reasons that spawned me to do this movie. I wanted to say, hey, wait, let me find out what really happened here. You know, I want to know what's going on in my own business, in my own town, in my own art. How does this happen? And so then I started to study Polanski and, you know, figure out what happened to him when he was young. And I started to empathize with the pain and suffering he went through as a kid. Of course, the war was very difficult, of course, in Germany. And his mother died in the war and so on. So I started to understand that, you know, he had a lot of emotional problems as a result of this, what happened during the war and so on with his mother and father and separations in the camps and all that. But it's still, to me, I found it fascinating that, you know, he got away and got convicted with raping a kid, and still afterwards how people would praise this artistic endeavor afterwards no matter what. And how some people are untouchable, yet some people like Mel Gibson are so easily scathed and able to be used as as scapegoats. And the thing is, I couldn't figure that out. But during the filming of this, I started to realize something, that when I did the research, the day that Sharon Tate was murdered, I should say the next day, they started taking, Life magazine started taking pictures of Roman Polanski, which the character I played, and in the movie you'll see it, in Polanski Unauthorized, you'll see my character, Polanski, take pictures in front of the door where the Manson family spread his own child's blood on the door that said pig. Now, this is definitely an occult ritual. This is a really sick, satanic, disgusting type of ritualistic thing that these people do. They're very sick people. Polanski was offered money to take a picture in front of this door with blood.
Wow. For
Life magazine. You know, I think it's either Life or Time. I think it's Life. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, and when I saw that, when I expressed that in my movie, I said, I know there's something very wrong about this. There's something beyond good and evil here. It's like, it's sociopathic. How does a man take a picture in front of his family's blood after it's been spilled for money, especially when they have money?
Truly disgusting.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And this is when all these things started to come together for me, and all these kind of ideas that I had in the early 90s and early 2000s about this kind of occult, so-called occult conspiracy. When I thought about it, how it was more than real. It was actually something I could express in my movies, and I did it with Polanski. It's a lot more. There's a lot more to the film than that, but these are very strange aspects to Hollywood.
Exactly, they definitely are. Now, Damian, one of my favorite scenes in your movies is when you and several inmates kill Gary Busey in El Padrino 2. Busey,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but when I think of that scene, I mean, when you said that, I went right back to the movie.
Exactly, I know.
During the movie.
Now, again, when he starred in one of my favorite films of all time, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Starred alongside Keanu Reeves in Point Break. Can you tell our listening audience about your production company, Amadeus Pictures, and your feature films, El Padrino and El Padrino 2, which in Spanish means The Godfather?
Well, those were films. El Padrino was it was more of a commercial film, and I kind of wanted to. What happened is when I did Blood In, Blood Out, for many years I would have kids come up to me and people, and they would say, "Hey, Miklo, I named my kid after you," and so on and so on. And I love your character, Miklo. And I saw a lot through the years of how important, how intense a character can be, and how people can be influenced by what you do as an artist. And I felt a bit guilty, even though I know Miklo was a great character, and it is one of my favorite characters I've ever done. But I felt a bit of guilt because in the movie, he does so many things that are, that could tend to influence people in the wrong way. And what I wanted to do is kind of express in El Padrino how a gangster, what a real gangster life adds up to. So in El Padrino, there's a saying, you either die or you go to prison, and that's, I know it's a very cliche and basic term, but that's what happens in El Padrino. I mean, everybody dies around my character, including myself. And I wanted to show that to not only the kids watching, but anybody who would watch these, this type of character I've played so many times, this intense gangster, sometimes Latino, sometimes Italian, but these characters, I wanted to express, it was a good movie, we had great cast, and it was a great artistic experience, but I wanted to kind of give a message like, hey, if you're going to do drugs, if you sell drugs, if you're going to kill people, you're going to live, if you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. And I wanted to kind of, have some sort of lesson in the film, some sort of redemption for what I expressed so many years as an actor who played gangsters. So that's what El Padrino started out for me, and it ended up being a very commercial film for me, which was amazing because I really never set out to be like commercial. I just set out to, one day I'll get an idea and I want to express myself, and I find a way to do it. Sometimes it's not a lot of money, sometimes it's more money.
Absolutely.
So it's really for me just to express myself as an artist, and sometimes, sometimes politically, sometimes not.
Absolutely.
El Padrino was a success, though.
Now, unfortunately, we are out of time. Now, I got to say, coming out here to Los Angeles to do the show every Sunday, it's got me thinking about the movie industry. Could there be a role for someone like myself in an Amadeus Productions film? Hey, I could play a bodyguard, a cop. What do you think?
Hey, let me tell you something. You don't have to put my arm behind my back to do it. It's done. One day we're going to work together.
Absolutely.
The thing is, when I'm coming back to L.A., I'll tell you one thing. I miss my Mexican food. It's killing me not having it.
We'll go out. I got
to get back.
We'll go out to King Taco, man. I'll buy you a
how about
Tepayac? Yeah, that too. Well, Mr. Chapa, it was great having you on. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you so much for this wonderful interview, and I look forward to many other stellar broadcasts with you in the near future.
Well, it was fun talking about things that most people don't talk about. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you so much for joining me today.